I used to think betrayal crept in slowly, that it tiptoed through cracks in a relationship, leaving signs, subtle changes, cold silences, late nights at work. But in my case, it didn't sneak in. It burst through the front door wearing a cocktail dress and a fake smile. It all began the night of her boss's annual summer party. My wife, Marissa, was an executive assistant at a high-profile marketing firm in Chicago. These parties were big deals, lavish rooftop affairs with champagne fountains, catered sushi, and live jazz. It was the kind of event where people were more interested in being seen than actually connecting. Still, she insisted I come along this time. Even helped me pick out a navy suit and tie. Said her boss liked when spouses showed up, said it helped with image. Looking back now, I think she just needed me there as a placeholder. We arrived around 7:30 p.m., the skyline glowing in twilight. Marissa looked stunning. Red dress, heels that clicked with purpose, and a scent that reminded me of our first anniversary. For the first 30 minutes, everything felt fine. We greeted a few people she introduced as just colleagues, drank from ridiculous fluted glasses, and she clung to my arm like I actually mattered. But then, as if someone flipped a switch, she changed. She excused herself to find Dana from accounting, and I didn't see her again for nearly an hour. When I did, she was standing near the bar, laughing, too loudly, with a group of men I didn't recognize. Her body language screamed flirtation, touching a guy's shoulder when she laughed, leaning in way too close, ignoring me completely. I walked over, tried to slip beside her like I belonged. She barely acknowledged me. No smile, no introduction, just a weird glance like I had interrupted something. Her boss, a guy named Leonard, gray hair, smug grin, probably mid-50s, made a joke about husbands crashing the fun. I laughed along, but my stomach turned. I was standing right there, and she was acting like I was invisible. I felt like a ghost. So I made a decision. I whispered to her, "I'm gonna head out. You seem busy." And her reply, "Oh yeah? Sure. I'll get an Uber later." That was it. No protest. No, wait, stay with me. Just a nod and a flick of her hand like I was a minor inconvenience. I walked out into the warm Chicago night, my head buzzing with confusion. I didn't know if I was overreacting or if something had shifted right there under the party lights. But then, 5 minutes after I left, I got a text. "Come back." Just those 2 words. No explanation. No context. Nothing. My heart skipped. Was she trying to fix things? Realizing I'd walked away too easily? But the truth behind that message, what she really meant, would change everything I believed about my marriage. And it would start unraveling faster than I could have ever prepared for. When I read "Come back," I hesitated. I stood on the sidewalk near the valet stand, phone in hand, replaying every moment from that party. The laughter, the way she leaned in toward that guy with the square jaw and loosened tie, how she didn't even blink when I said I was leaving. It all gnawed at me. But something didn't sit right about that text. It felt off. Not like a "please come back, I miss you" kind of message. No follow-up. No apology. Just that short command, like I was expected to obey. I didn't reply. Instead, I got in my car and drove 2 blocks away, parking near a quiet gas station. I waited. I wanted to see if she'd call, if she'd say something that explained everything. But the phone stayed silent. Until 5 minutes later, when another message came through. "Room 814. Don't be late." My stomach dropped. We didn't have a hotel room. We weren't staying anywhere. We were supposed to go home after the party. What the hell was she talking about? I felt frozen, conflicted, angry. Then it hit me. That message wasn't meant for me. She thought I was someone else. I sat there, engine humming, staring at those words while my hands trembled around the wheel. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity twisted harder than my pride. So I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I pulled out of the lot and drove to the building where the party was held, attached to a luxury hotel. The parking garage still had space. The lobby was quiet, warm, and glowing under chandeliers. I didn't ask questions at the front desk. I didn't need to. I took the elevator to the 8th floor, and what I saw when the door of room 814 opened would mark the beginning of the end. The hallway on the 8th floor was almost too quiet. Thick carpet muted my footsteps as I approached room 814, every step feeling heavier than the last. I didn't even know what I expected to find. Part of me was still hoping it was some misunderstanding. Maybe she was planning a surprise for me, something stupid and romantic I'd misread completely. But the other part? The part that knew my wife hadn't looked me in the eyes all night? That part was bracing for impact. I stood at the door, debating whether to knock or just walk away. Then I heard something on the other side, a laugh. Hers. Light, flirtatious. The same one I heard back at the bar. And then a man's voice. Not just any voice. It was Leonard's. Her boss. I told you he'd leave early, he chuckled. That was it. I didn't need to hear another word. My chest was pounding, my fingers curled into a fist, but I wasn't about to kick down the door or make a scene. I wasn't giving them that satisfaction. I turned and walked straight back to the elevator, numb, like my body was moving on autopilot. But I wasn't done. I drove home, grabbed my laptop, and started digging. I remembered Marissa once logged into her company portal on my computer. I opened the browser history. Thankfully, she had never cleared it, and with a few clicks, I was in. Emails, calendar invites, internal chats. What I found wasn't just one affair. It was a pattern. Lunches that didn't exist. Business trips that didn't align with her company's travel schedule. Meeting rooms booked late at night. Some of the messages were coded, but the meaning was unmistakable. And Leonard? He wasn't the first. He was just the most recent. That hotel room? It was part of their routine. And worse, some of her coworkers knew. They had left comments on group chats like, "You two are wild," and "Hope HR doesn't catch on LOL." It was all a joke to them. A casual workplace scandal they'd normalized. And me? I was just the idiot husband showing up to parties with a smile on my face, clueless. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry either. I planned. If she wanted to act like I was invisible, I'd show her what disappearing really looked like. The next morning, Marissa came home like nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen still wearing her dress from the night before, barefoot, holding her heels in one hand and an iced coffee in the other. Her hair was a mess, but her expression was calm, almost cheerful. Like she had pulled an all-nighter at some fun after-party and was still riding the high. I stood there, already dressed, drinking plain black coffee at the counter. She didn't even flinch. "Hey babe," she said casually, avoiding eye contact. I stayed over at Dana's. Her car got booted, so we just crashed at the hotel. "Hope you got home okay." That was her story. That was what she went with. I looked at her for a moment. I could feel the weight of everything I knew pressing against the inside of my skull, but I didn't say a word. I just nodded once and mumbled, "Yeah." She didn't ask why I left the party. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She didn't ask if we were okay. She just showered, changed, and by noon, she was off again, brunch with a few girls from work, she said. But I already knew her friends weren't involved. I spent the next few days quietly gathering evidence. Screenshots, emails, text messages from the synced cloud backup she forgot to disable. I opened a new bank account in a different institution. I redirected my paychecks. I contacted an attorney recommended by someone I trusted, a discreet and ruthless man named Dennis Sharp. He didn't flinch when I laid it all out. He simply said, "You want quiet or public?" "Quiet," I told him, "but not invisible." He nodded once. "Then we'll take everything from her, legally." I started sleeping in the guest room. Marissa barely noticed. She was either too distracted or too confident I wouldn't do anything. She thought she had me pegged as the passive, loyal husband who didn't ask questions. And for years, that's exactly who I was. But people forget, the quietest ones don't explode. They evaporate. And when they go, they take everything with them. Each morning, I watched her leave the house with that same calm smirk. Each night, she came home late, giving half-hearted excuses. But I didn't argue. I didn't confront her. I simply watched and waited until the day I found something that changed everything. It wasn't a text or a video. It was a document she accidentally left on the printer, one that showed just how deep her betrayal really went. And from that moment forward, I knew this wasn't just an affair. This was war. It was a Tuesday morning when I found the printout. Marissa had already left for work. I was working from home that week, a rare break from my usual routine at the office, and I headed to the printer in the hallway to grab a few pages I had just scanned. I wasn't even looking for anything suspicious anymore. By then, I had all the confirmation I needed. But this wasn't just another piece of the puzzle. This was the entire picture in full color. It was a legal draft, a cohabitation agreement. Not with me. With him. Leonard. The document spelled out things like shared expenses, furniture division, a move-in timeline, and what hit me like a gut punch, a joint investment account they had opened together. There were initials typed in the margins. LH&MR. Marissa Ray. And Leonard Hayes. She had signed it digitally. 2 weeks ago. She was preparing to leave me. Quietly. With everything. In that moment, my anger didn't flare. It calcified. This wasn't just infidelity. This was strategy. She was creating a future with him, the same man who mocked me at the party, who winked while my wife ignored me, who was probably still laughing over drinks with her while I sat in a home she was planning to abandon. I didn't destroy the paper. I scanned it. Then I placed it neatly back in the tray, just as she left it. Let her think I hadn't seen it. Let her keep believing she was 2 steps ahead. That night, she came home humming to herself, scrolling on her phone as she walked through the door. I asked her if she wanted dinner. She blinked and said, "I already ate." No apology. No curiosity. Just distance. I asked her, as calmly as I could, "You good? You seem somewhere else lately." She gave me that forced half-smile and shrugged. "Just tired. Long week." I nodded, keeping my eyes on hers. "Need anything from me?" That question must have thrown her off. She looked at me, startled for a second, then shook her head. "No, I'm okay." That night, as she fell asleep beside me in our bed, the same bed she once begged me to build with my own hands when we moved in, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't confused. I wasn't even angry. I was done. The only thing I had left to do now was finish the plan I'd started. Not out of revenge, but out of survival. Because she thought I didn't know. And that was going to be her greatest mistake. The following week, everything was about precision. While Marissa kept floating through the days with her head in the clouds, planning her secret new life, I worked in silence, behind the scenes, making sure that when the moment came, her world would shift so hard it wouldn't recover. I met again with Dennis, the attorney. We finalized the paperwork. I didn't want drama, but I wanted to keep what was mine. The house, the cars, the retirement account. Dennis looked me in the eyes and said, "She's trying to skip out clean. We're going to make sure she doesn't." Then came the part that I didn't think would hurt, but did. I backed up every photo, every message, every birthday video of us from the last 10 years. Not for her. For me. I needed to see it one last time. Not because I missed it, but because I wanted to remember what was real and what was fake. There were trips I paid for that she took with the girls, but in the photos, the reflection of sunglasses showed a man's silhouette. There were beach pictures with half-hidden wine glasses, labeled solo time, that I now knew weren't solo at all. Her lies weren't sloppy. They were subtle, almost elegant in how carefully she had built a parallel life. She was never hysterical, never cruel. She was just cold, distant, efficient. But what she never realized was that I'd learned from her. On Wednesday, I logged into the investment account she opened with Leonard. She had used one of our shared emails to verify it, not realizing I still had access. I didn't move a cent. I just downloaded every monthly statement, noted every transfer. She had shifted our money, funds we once built together, into this account under the guise of joint savings. Leonard had matched her deposits. But I noticed something else, small withdrawals on weekends. Hotel names. Dinner spots. Gifts. She was living like she was already divorced. So I decided to play along. That Friday, I told her I had a work retreat out of town. Packed a bag. Kissed her on the cheek. She barely noticed, murmured "safe travels" without looking up from her phone. I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove 1 block before parking behind the gas station. I waited. Sure enough, 2 hours later, Leonard pulled up to our house in his black Lexus. I watched him from behind tinted windows. Watched as he got out in slacks and an untucked button-down and rang the doorbell like it was his place now. She opened the door in something short and silky. She didn't even glance outside to check the street. They laughed. Then she pulled him inside. That moment, seeing them together in my doorway, didn't break me. It finished waking me up. Because now I didn't just want out. I wanted everything out in the open. And what I did next made sure they'd both regret underestimating me. The moment Leonard stepped inside my home, I stopped being her husband. That title belonged to a man who believed in her, who trusted that the woman he built a life with was on his side. That man was already gone. What was left was someone she didn't know, someone she'd never seen coming. I sat in the parking lot for nearly an hour, watching nothing but shadows move behind the curtains of our living room. They sat on my couch, drank my wine, laughed in the space I used to call safe. But I wasn't there for confrontation. I was there for documentation. Dennis had warned me. You can't barge in and shout your truth. You have to prove it, cleanly, calmly, legally. So I did exactly that. I had hired a private investigator a week before. He wasn't cheap, but he was thorough. I handed over the timeframes, locations, and emails I'd uncovered. He installed a motion camera near our garage, disguised as a sprinkler head, and another by the side entrance, the one Marissa always used when she didn't want neighbors noticing her guests. By the time I was sitting in that car, the camera had already captured Leonard's car, his face, the kiss in the doorway, and them closing the door behind them. But the footage inside the house? That was where it got interesting. The PI had placed a single, well-hidden camera behind a bookshelf in the living room, where it faced the kitchen and half the open floor plan. It wasn't invasive. It didn't break any laws. It was my home. I had the right. What it captured was damning. Leonard wasn't just visiting. He belonged there, or at least thought he did. He joked about which drawer was his, mentioned he wanted to bring over a few of his own things soon. They talked about repainting, about renovating, as if I didn't exist. At one point, he actually asked if she had talked to the idiot yet. Marissa laughed and said, "He'll find out when it's final. He won't make a scene. He's too passive." That was the moment I leaned back in my car and smiled. Because what she didn't realize was that the passive man she was talking about had already submitted the divorce petition that morning, had already frozen the accounts she was quietly draining, had already filed a fraud report on the transfer of shared funds to her joint account with Leonard, and had already set up a meeting with her company's board, who, by the way, had a zero-tolerance policy for executives having relationships with assistants, especially when company money was involved. The footage, the documents, the proof, it was all in a folder I had labeled Marissa Exit Plan. I didn't plan to humiliate her. I didn't need to. I just wanted her to feel it, the unraveling of control, the loss of certainty, the silence she used as a weapon now echoing back at her. That night, I returned home well past midnight. Leonard's car was gone. The lights were off. She was asleep, or pretending to be. I didn't care. I lay in bed beside her, fully dressed, arms folded across my chest, knowing that by this time tomorrow, her world would begin to fold in on itself. And the woman who once treated me like background noise was about to hear me loud and clear. The next morning, Marissa woke up to a very different house. The bedroom closet was half empty. The safe was gone. My work computer, my keepsakes, the framed wedding photo on her side of the bed, all gone. In their place, I had left a thick white envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside it were copies of the legal documents, the divorce filing, the fraud evidence, the screenshots, the video stills, all laid out in cold, factual order. There were no angry letters, no melodramatic goodbyes, just the truth, undeniable and clean. When she called, I didn't answer. When she texted, I didn't read it. When she tried to show up at my new apartment 2 days later, buzzing from the front desk downstairs, I simply told the concierge, "Tell her I'm not available." The moment I cut off her access to me, she panicked. And that panic told me everything I needed to know. She never thought I'd actually walk away. She thought I'd cling, beg, cry, do anything to keep her. But I had already done all of that, years ago, before I knew who she truly was. Now I was done. And as everything fell apart around her, the board suspended Leonard pending an internal investigation, her HR department issued an official reprimand, and her name began to quietly fade from company rosters, I was building again. From scratch. I got my own place downtown. Small, quiet, full of light. No ghosts. No reminders. I started running again. Picked up guitar lessons, something I'd always said I'd do, when there's time. I even reconnected with a few friends I hadn't seen in years, the ones Marissa subtly pushed out of my life because they were too immature or messy. Turns out, they were exactly the kind of people I needed. Honest, grounded, imperfect in the best ways. And no, this isn't one of those stories where I say, I found someone new the next week. That's not real life. Healing isn't romantic at first. It's hard. It's quiet. But every single morning I woke up without the weight of lies in the room. I felt lighter. One day, weeks later, I passed Marissa downtown. She was walking alone, sunglasses on, no smile. She saw me. And in that moment, for the first time in years, she looked small. I nodded. She opened her mouth like she might say something, but nothing came out. I didn't need her to speak. Because silence? That was her language. And now, finally, I had learned to speak it back. Only this time, it wasn't the silence of pain. It was the silence of peace. The silence of a man who finally walked away and meant it.